Now let's talk about Nigeria's debt bombshell, as some put it, because after accomplishing what many considered to be an economic milestone by clearing the country's debt with the IMF, the Tinubu government has just requested approval from the National Assembly to borrow a staggering $21.5 billion and issue a 750 billion naira pension bond. If approved, the move will push Nigeria's total debt stock to a whopping 182 trillion naira, up from the current 144 trillion. This from the same administration that said it was saving $7.5 billion annually from the removal of fuel subsidy. So how contradictory and confusing is this? How much does it suggest imprudence and a lack of financial discipline? And how much does it raise serious questions about sustainability? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by President Tinubu's Special Advisor on Economic Affairs, Dr. Tope Fasua. Good to see you,
Good
Doc.
to see you too.
Why pay off Nigeria's debt today only to plunge the country into debt tomorrow?
Well, it's pretty funny how you stated it, but also I understand that quite a few people have been pushing that narrative, which is wrong. Of course, Nigeria paid off the IMF debt, which was collected in 2020 as part of the emergency COVID, assistance, as it were. As a matter of course, we paid that debt as a matter of course. In fact, if IMF hadn't issued a statement saying that Nigeria had paid off a whopping $3.4 billion, which is no small amount of money in most economies in the world, people wouldn't have known because Nigeria didn't make any statement about it. However, until that happened. So now we didn't do that. The point is this, that Nigeria, as a matter of policy and as a matter of course, always services its debts and keeps to its obligation. Nigeria has never defaulted on any of its loans. The last time I checked, a country like Argentina had defaulted between 2001 to date about 9 times.
If the size of that debt servicing is getting bigger every year, then the possibility of defaulting is higher, isn't it?
You know what, let's just stick to the numbers. The first thing is that, first of all, let's look at it this way. We'll come back to debt servicing. $21.5 billion mentioned is a plan over a few years, and it's like setting a limit to say, you know what, you can't get past this limit. As a matter of a bigger plan, there's a rolling plan about borrowing and so on. Now it's number one. Number two is that nobody is going to lend the country of our size or GDP size $21 billion in one fell swoop and just say take it. You don't walk into and number three, like most of the debts we're taking are now targeted project tied loans and facilities and stuff like that, and so it's not going to happen. So, however, the debt management office and the apparatus of government that's responsible for that sought that approval as a part of the medium-term expenditure framework, which informs the budget. But what we do then is that we go to that budget, MTF, and take the budget out every year, work on the budget, According to the medium-term expenditure framework, the budget for this year was meant to be about 47 trillion. Now we're talking about 54.9 trillion, meaning that there are always adjustments. This year, we're borrowing $1.3 billion only for 2025. That's why the fact that we need to fund a deficit of about 13 to 14 trillion naira. So people like the sensation. Yes, well, if they want, whoever wants to go sensational, can as well go. But the point is that Nigeria is maintaining one of the best debt regimes in Africa. Debt to GDP 52%. Now let's talk about debt sustainability, which you mentioned. I was doing a bit of research recently, and I found myself in December 2022 reading an article. And in December 2022, Nigeria's debt service to revenue ratio was 120%. As at December 2024, it was 64%. 64%. And of course, you know what the government is doing, trying to ramp up on taxation. The committee, which I'm part of as well, the Taiwo committee, submitted his work. The National Assembly this week were meant to come out with the harmonized position for the president. And all what that is doing is to say, you know what, we know we need to speed up on revenue. We want to get to 18% of debt, of tax to GDP ratio. And in part of all of this, of course, I know that our debt right now, as of December 2024, was 144 trillion in naira. But in dollar terms, our debt fell between 2023 and 2014 by $10 billion.
Well,
so there's been a bit of play around the value of the naira and what have you. But the fact is that we're keeping a tight ship here.
Well, according to the Debt Management Office,
Right.
which is an official agency,
Yes.
Nigeria's debt surged by 48.6%
Because of devaluation,
in
because of the
2024.
depreciation of the naira.
It jumped from 97 trillion naira in
Right.
2023 to 144 trillion. That raises questions.
Right.
You are an economist.
Yes.
Of long-term repayment capacity. Beyond
Two
that,
things. Yes.
Nigeria is hemorrhaging money in the oil sector.
Oh, well,
It's still falling short of its 2 million barrel target.
All taken.
Last month, it could only manage 1.4 million barrels per day, which means that it is losing nearly $1 billion a
Right.
month as a result. If production is constantly falling short of budget targets, it means that billions of dollars are being lost in potential earnings. So
Right.
by borrowing more to fund these gaps, aren't you simply postponing a deeper financial crisis?
Well, you know, when people talk about productivity and producing more of this and that, we tend to ignore the fact that some of these things cannot be wheeled into action, into reality. You know, I mean, we want to do 2 million barrels a day, 2.05 million barrels. Sometimes it's a projection, is an aspiration, you know. But sometimes you may not get there, but what you want to do is that on a daily basis, you're striving towards meeting that target. There are so many Nigerian companies have now moved into many of the marginal fields, many of the onshore fields, producing daily. I interact with a few of them, and the ambition is that in a few months we could be ramping up to about 1.8 million barrels, 1.9 million barrels.
Yeah,
At
but
the
that's
end of
purely
this year,
speculative.
well, it's speculative, but it's a daily grind. It's a daily affair to keep working and gathering, these resources together. Mind you, there was a point in time we went down to 800,000 barrels. You know, so we're ramping up on that. But again, of course, the cognitive dissonance is that most people focus on the crude oil. You know, but the kind of reforms we did in the tax area. Do you know that you can run this country on
Potentially, yes.
taxes, on property
But
taxes
potentially
alone?
you
Potentially,
can.
yes. No, and that's, of course,
Yeah.
it takes a process. You know, I mean, the committee led by Tawo Yedele, we met for about a year plus before coming up with a resolution and then pushing it ahead. You know, and of course, the National Assembly, they represent everybody in Nigeria. So there's a bit of back and forth and say, you know what, this can fly, this cannot fly. The bottom line is that the diversification of the economy we're trying to achieve is to say that, look, the dependency on crude oil should reduce, and so that we can move into more sustainable sources like other countries.
Absolutely, I agree. But what you also want is to maximize the amount
Both
of money
ways.
that, because I mean,
Absolutely.
before you get to that point where you diversify the economy to the extent that, you know, you're getting all these funds from taxes and from agriculture and all the rest of it, you're still going to need to shore up your funds.
Absolutely.
And those funds are coming from oil. The president promised to shore up revenues when he assumed office, but instead,
and we have done that.
Well, I don't know about that, because instead he's been aggressively taking on new loans. I mean, you know, as I said, since 2023, he's borrowed nearly $10 billion. I mean, that's separate. That's separate from the new $24 billion that he's seeking to borrow.
In dollar terms, Mr. Charles, in dollar terms, and you can check this, anyone watching us can check it, that the Nigeria's loans as at 2023 December was $104 billion, as at 2024 December was $94 billion, a drop of $10 billion. We're not tanking on loans. Okay, and again,
well, as I said, the Debt Management Office said it rose by 46.8%.
Exactly. So you're talking about the naira value actually went up because the naira devalued and kind of depreciated by more than. In fact, let me give you a shocking news. Nigerian states. You know, of course, that debt belongs to both the federal and the state. The federal actually is the big kahuna. The federal collects the bigger aspect. However, for the part that the states collected, the states were able to pay back 32% of their total debt in 1 year. And that's why you saw that the debts increased by 48%. Maybe it could have increased by 70%, you know. So the states paid down 32% of their total loans in 1 year. That's remarkable. And why did that happen? Because of the reforms. Because the reforms happens to have put quite a bit of money in the pockets of the states, in the coffers of the states. A number of them, almost all of them, have tripled their allocation that they get from federal. Most of them have also doubled their internally generated revenue. Even the ones that were laggards in the past are now catching up. Almost none of them borrowed money. In fact, only 3 states borrowed money in 2024. Enugu State, Niger State, and one other, you know, who probably had projects. In fact, what this has made to happen is that now the state's balance sheets seem to have been freed up largely. The balance sheets are looking good for new borrowing, as a matter of fact. And mind you, let me not make this point. Now, I said the state's balance sheets are freed up for more borrowing because, I mean, the state paid out 97% of what they've ever owed in 1 year. That's crazy, you know. But what this does is that, you know, a country is run, at the federal level, state level, what have you, is run like a company. A thriving company is not thinking about paying down its debt, it's thinking about expanding its business. In which case, we're talking about expanding the GDP to a level where we'll be able to actually, first, so let me put it this way, expanding the GDP, expanding the revenue base of a country in order to take on more loans.
But
and
you know the problem.
Fund infrastructure. That's where we are right now.
You're a very well-respected
You,
economist.
sir. I appreciate that.
And I've known you for, I mean, you've been an economist for a long time.
I tried,
But I'm sure you've heard this. We've heard it all before. That's why people get worried when these things happened. All these sort of grand plans for, hold on a minute, for infrastructure development.
Yes, and
all this talk about, you know, GDP growth, improved economy, more jobs. We've heard it all before.
But something has changed this time. If you've seen the Financial Times, you know, recent editorial, which I read just today, it says that something seemed to have changed, even though only a few discerning people seem to be aware. But anyway, it's our duty to push that reality and to push that information into the public.
But the problem is that,
you know what, you talk about infrastructure. We have a lot more infrastructure now.
You've still got an electricity crunch.
Well,
you've still got agriculture is still
agriculture
stifled by insecurity.
Agriculture is not. I mean, I was watching. I watched Mr. Peter Obi saying a few things in your show the other day, and was saying Nigeria produces 10% to the rice that Bangladesh produces. I researched; it wasn't true. You know, Nigeria actually, by FAO, produces the most rice in Nigeria. I mean, so you talk about agriculture. You talk about, you talk about infrastructure. Our airports are not what they used to be 3-4 years ago. You get a good experience on that. We have more railroads.
I agree with that. We have more railroads. I travel through. Well, certainly the international airports.
We talk about the major infrastructure, Lagos, Calabar, Badagry, Sokoto. All of those are running now. I'm preparing a comprehensive report about the achievements of this government in 2 years. It's incredible. My office is doing that, and I'm probably going to share that with you
please.
in a couple of days.
Whatever happened to the $7.5 billion a year that the administration claimed that the removal of subsidy has saved Nigeria? Because that means that this country would have an extra $15 billion in its coffers right now.
Perhaps indeed. Anyway, the point is that you'll see the money in the states. You see the money in the states. And of course, even the federal is getting more revenue in Naira.
So why are you borrowing so much more money?
Because you have to keep expanding. You have to keep growing. You see, I think that a lot of Nigerians that do this analysis, we seem stuck in that this idea that Nigeria cannot be better than what it used to be or bigger than what it used to be. We should be aspiring. Okay, for example,
Dr. Fasua, what people are afraid of is the history of this country of corruption. It's not even that. It is the fact that, as I said to you before, we've heard it all before. Grand plans about infrastructure development, successive governments talking about the billions they're spending on electricity, and we never see any electricity.
Financial Times, in its rather cynical report or editorial did say that this time around they think that something has changed. They believe that the president should continue with his reforms. I believe that too. I mean, the reforms are to be guided. The worst is over as far as these reforms are concerned.
Well, not to the person on the street.
No, exactly. Even the person on the street. So where we are right now is that we need to now focus on delivering directly, those dividends to the people.
Absolutely.
Starting from the
so
most
we'll
vulnerable.
have to see if that
happens.
You see that sign there says we've got 2 minutes to end the chat.
Okay,
so let me ask you this very quickly. The original plan by this government was to promote investment abroad, to attract equity investors rather than incurring new debt. Why has that plan now shifted? Because borrowing now makes up around 60% of the 2025 budget.
No, because we are probably, it's about 38% the last time I checked.
Well,
maybe you're trying to add
according to the figures,
no one is
60%.
Borrowing this amount of money this year. The borrowing for this year, like I told you before, is $1.3 billion in FX terms. And the rest, a lot of that will be sourced locally. We issued a Sukuk bond just last week or about a week and a half ago, and that has been oversubscribed times 7 times. We tried to raise 300 billion, we got 2.2 trillion. That means that the investors actually understand that there's value in this country and they're taking a bet on this country.
What about this bond of 758 billion to offset pension liabilities? I mean, debt doesn't borrowing. Doesn't that borrowing suggest that the government doesn't have the reserves and hasn't planned strategies to honor such an important obligation? That's the impression it gives.
Again, first of all,
and that doesn't give international people confidence.
This is from a plan, like when you start to do the expenditure framework, it's kind of a vague thing that, look, this is what we're going to do, this is what we intend to do, there's a shortfall here and there, The pension fund of Nigeria has become quite robust. In fact, everybody
but you're borrowing 758 billion.
There could be cash. Sometimes you could actually borrow a bit of money to stave off a cash flow shortfall. That doesn't mean that the world is falling. But again, let me say this: Nigeria,
on where you're sitting,
Nigeria actually has one of the best debt management strategies in Africa, and in fact, our debt position is actually better than most countries in Africa. It's better than Angola, Kenya, South Africa, countries like Algeria and co. We're keeping a good books. The BMO started in 2006, and we've been able to get a hang on our debts. And I think that, but let me say this lastly,
Very briefly.
The whole idea,
10 seconds.
Yes, the whole idea is that a country, just like a company, if a company was doing well, your focus is not on how to pay back. You're trying to build stock, you're trying to expand your customer base, you're trying to improve your turnover. So in the same way, Nigeria is trying to improve its GDP, deliver to its people, ensure the standards of living go up. And when the rebasing is done of the GDP, which imminently will come out, in fact, the ratios will drop across the board, and all these amounts will not be a big deal for the economy. And I think that we're at that point. We last did this almost 12 years ago.
On that note,
the numbers have changed entirely from real estate to technology to every sector in the economy.
I think you've made the point.
Numbers have changed. Thank you very
much. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Dr. Tope Fasua is President Tinubu's Special Advisor on Economic Affairs. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.